quick shout out to my amazing sponsors for the Patriot Barbie podcast. My title sponsor is Dr. Stephen Soloway. He is known globally as the Miracle MD. He's the author of Bad Medicine, a book about bad politics, bad government, bad hospitals, bad drug companies, and bad doctors. Buy it on drsoloway.com. My other sponsor, Celtic Plastics, is a water filtration system for your home and work that clears bacteria, fluoride, and heavy metals from your drinking water. You can buy one on CelticPlastics.com and use my code PatriotBarbie for 10% off. And one last shout out to Red Balloon. Thousands of companies are pushing back on wokeness in the workplace. Find a freedom-loving, non-woke job at redballoon.work and follow them on Instagram at redballoonwork. For all my sponsor info, book, and merch, go to patriotbarbie.com. Like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Patriot Barbie podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey Graham, author and conservative activist. I love Jesus. I love America. I'm a proud wife, mom of 3, and I'm having bold and witty conversations with America's patriots, the ones that cancel culture desperately want to blacklist. Trust me, I've been there. In 2020, I defied government lockdowns in Oregon, reopened my salon, and became an icon of freedom. I've been targeted by government and raging liberals every day since, and I refuse to back down. Patriots, I'm here to tell you, your values are worth fighting for. The Patriot Barbie podcast starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Patriot Barbie podcast. Super excited about this episode. This is one of my favorite topics because it's so controversial and there's so much media and hysteria around this. And it is the transgender movement. And I've been pretty outspoken about where I stand. I believe that the movement to encourage and indoctrinate and brainwash children into believing that they're another gender is incredibly wrong. There is no if, and, or buts. There's no black and white. It's the wrong thing to do. We should be teaching children that their identity is in Christ. I am so excited to talk to this guest today because she has been involved in the transgender movement in a way that's going to be extremely unexpected. And she's very open-minded, so she's going to get to hear my point of view, and we get to hear her point of view in the transgender movement experience. So welcome to the show, Cat Cattinson.
Thanks for having me, Lindsey. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yes. So tell me, is this kind of your platform now, being that you had, I don't even want to tell the story, but is this your platform speaking out against the transgender movement?
Well, I'll just start out by saying that I never intended to be any kind of activist or to really speak out on any issues at all. I really started posting content because I'm a singer-songwriter, musician, and but I was identifying as transgender. I identified as a trans man for over 15 years, since I was about 13 years old. And so when I started transitioning and taking testosterone, it affected my singing voice in a very, it didn't just make it deeper, but it actually negatively affected it and made me unable to sing and continue doing my music at all. And so that was one of the major reasons, among others, health issues being one of the more pressing things. But those things led me to decide to detransition and go back to living as my birth sex. I no longer feel that I have a gender identity or any of that. But so I initially just started talking about detransitioning as it related to my music. But then from there, I just, I guess, kind of gained traction through that. But it wasn't ever really my intention. But I do want to help people with my story if I can. And so, I do think it's important to speak out for that reason, because as you said, I think there are a lot of young people who are confused right now and are not being given accurate information and being sort of coerced into making decisions that A, they can't really comprehend, and B, could affect them negatively in the long term.
Yeah. So when did you transition? I guess detransition. When did you detransition back into a woman? How long ago?
Well, it's been a process. I started detransitioning around, I was 30 years old, and it was 2020, the end of 2020. So it's coming up on 2 years since I went off of the hormones. I had surgery scheduled as well, top surgery, and I canceled that. I canceled my legal name change. I already had like the paperwork turned in for that. I'm so glad I didn't go through with that because that would have been a nightmare going through all that red tape again. But so yeah, that was the end of 2020. But for probably the next 6 months to a year after that, I had what I call an ideological detransition because there was the piece where I was like, I just can't physically do this to myself anymore, mostly for health and, like I said, my singing voice. But then there was the whole just sort of deprogramming from this ideology that I had believed since I was 13 years old, and it was I first encountered an online forum at that age where there was people talking about transitioning, and like I didn't even know it was a thing before that. Like I didn't know it was an option to try to medically alter your body to I mean, it's not technically, humans can't change sex, so it's not technically
Right. Thank you for
transitioning.
saying that.
Of course, well,
Yeah.
it's the truth, and the fact that it upsets so many people, just basic biological facts, is really disturbing. But it really does. It upsets and triggers so many people, and by speaking out, it's not my intention to hurt anybody or to make fun of anyone or to speak negatively about people. It's just this ideology has gotten out of control, and I just think it's hurting a lot of people. And it's important to state basic facts like humans can't change sex, because impressionable kids, they need to know these things. Because at
Right.
13, I didn't understand that. I thought people were literally changing sex, and that affected me and my beliefs and the decisions I made going forward in my life.
Well, and I think that when you say things like, "I don't wanna hurt anyone," or "I'm not trying to make fun of anyone," you have authority in this category, and I think it's important, when you're we all have an opinion, and that gives us an authority in every topic in America, in politics, in society, but when you lived it, I feel like that gives you the authority for people to recognize, of course, you're not making fun of it. You did it. You were it. You lived this. And now you have the authority to speak about the damages it did and why you came back and what it's doing to children. I'm curious, did you feel like at 13, did you feel pressure to transition? Did you speak to a counselor who sort of swayed you one way or another? Or did this chat room sort of give you kind of like, oh, well, great, I feel confused. So my solution is that I'm a boy. I mean, or was there any other opportunity given to you to counsel you the opposite way? Like, hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable in your skin. You're 13 years old. We all were. Let's get through this and let's talk. I mean, did you feel brainwashed kind of into this?
So let me preface this by saying that when I was 13, like I'm a bit older than some of the kids transitioning now, coming out as trans now.
Mhm.
Like I was 13 in like the early 2000s. So back then there wasn't this huge push for affirmative care,
Mhm.
gender affirming care like there is now. And when I say gender affirming care, I mean essentially, doctors and therapists will immediately affirm a child's transgender identity, sometimes suggest hormone blockers or testosterone, estrogen within one appointment or a few appointments. And
Mhm.
back then it wasn't like that. So back then, if you were trans, it was, or if you identified as trans, it wasn't just this widely known about and accepted thing as much as it is today. So I came out to a few friends when I was like 13, 14, some of whom also I ended up identifying as trans later. And I kind of just told some friends. I didn't come out to my parents actually for a few years. I also had so I had a myriad of other mental health issues. Probably the most severe being my eating disorder. I also struggled with anorexia and bulimia
Mm.
at that age, and so my parents did take me to a therapist like for that. Who then actually recommended I go to inpatient treatment for that, just to stabilize my health. And so that was sort of the more pressing concern for a few years.
Right.
But then when I was 17, I think I'd come out to my parents at that point, maybe a year or two prior, and they were just kind of, they loved me a lot, and I think they were just concerned about me. They looked into transitioning and what that entails, and the surgeries, and just all these drastic measures, and I think they were just worried for me, but they were hoping that my gender dysphoria would go away and on its own. But they did take me to a gender therapist when I was 17, and this wasn't just any gender therapist. This was like the top gender therapist in not well. I lived in a small town, but this is like Sacramento, which is like the largest neighboring city, and
Okay.
so they took me to basically the head honcho of gender care there, and he affirmed my trans identity on the first appointment, and this was back in 2008.
He
So
affirmed
quite a
your
while ago.
trans he affirmed, meaning he said he didn't say you might be confused, you might be gay. He said you clearly are born the wrong gender. Is that what affirming means?
Exactly. He
On the
started
first
referring to
appointment.
me on the first appointment. He started to referring to me as he, him.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
he started, just right on, man. Like I don't know, just like all the stereotypical like
Using all
guy
the
talk.
cliche dude terms
Yeah,
like, "What's up, bro?"
exactly. And like I mean, I was a kid who was struggling with gender dysphoria, so there was a part of me that did feel good about that, but also, like I had just come out of eating disorder treatment, right? And like I knew that I
Right.
had other issues, like I realized that my gender dysphoria was interwoven with that and could be a large part of that. But what he seemed to do was just assume that the gender dysphoria was the baseline issue on which all of my other issues were based, and that
Gotcha.
just automatically by affirming me, like that would make my eating disorder go away, it'd make my
Mhm.
anxiety go away.
And
And
they're
that's just
doing that a lot now, right? They're kinda saying, "Okay, because you're depressed and suicidal and you have an eating disorder and you, can't make friends or you're whatever the psychological issue may be," I feel like they're doing that now. They're saying, "Well, it's because you're the wrong gender, and that's if we switch you, that's gonna fix everything."
absolutely, it's even more common now than it was back then. Like back then, the climate around gender and transitioning was just totally
Oh,
different.
yeah.
So a lot of people are surprised that it even happened to me like back then. But since I am from California, I feel like California was one of the pioneer states, and I guess
Mhm.
like the spread of this ideology. But yeah, so it is really disturbing what's happening now, because parents, their kid will come to them and say that they feel like a boy or they feel like a girl. It is happening disproportionately with young girls now, although it is
Right.
happening with both sexes. And so the parents, unknowingly, they'll take their kid to a gender therapist. A lot of people are surprised that my therapist, even back in 2008, was so affirming, because it wasn't as common back then, but now it's very common for parents to, their child will come to them saying, I feel like a little boy, or I feel like a little girl. And they'll take them to a gender therapist thinking that this is a specialist who's going to help them work through their issues, figure out what's going
Mhm.
on, at least attempt to help them accept themselves as they are without these surgeries and hormonal interventions. And a lot of times what happens, and I've heard this from, at this point, dozens of parents, is that the therapist will just immediately suggest putting them on puberty blockers. They'll immediately refer to them by pronouns of the opposite sex, or by
Mhm.
they them pronouns. Even kids who are identifying as non-binary, they can still get puberty blockers and other medical interventions. So and a lot of trans activists are just flat out denying that this is happening, but it absolutely is. I've spoken to so many parents, and other detransitioners as well, who said they were immediately affirmed, and a lot of them are like me, who knew they had other issues, and they were still ignored in favor of hormones and surgery.
Right, and I mean, the what it comes down to for me, which is so alarming, is that I remember being 13 and we don't we th you thought you knew everything about everything. I remember that, and you don't. Now that we grow up, you look back and go, "Oh, I was so vulnerable. I cared about the wrong things, and I could easily be convinced of all the wrong things at any point." At 13, for you to be confused about something so big and to have an adult come in and just coddle to that and change your whole life when you weren't mature enough to be making this decision. I mean, we're encouraging kids at 5 and 6 in kindergarten to start talking about this crap, which really pisses me off. But even at 13, like you're saying, you had an eating disorder. I remember having a very, very minor eating disorder, and it's like our brains aren't developed enough to figure out what is good and healthy and right for our bodies. And to me, it's child abuse. Like, to me, I think every person like you at 13, if an adult came to you and affirmed something that changed your life forever and did damage to your body, you should have the right to sue that person. They took advantage of a minor, and they changed the sexuality and the biology and the working health of your body because they wanted to further an agenda. So, I mean, are in regards to like living as a man for the last 16 years, um, do you have regrets? Are you pissed? Are you like remorseful? Or is it just a season of your life? You feel like, God's prepared me to speak out against this. This is just, I mean, you have the authority to speak on these things. And I think it's important that people hear what your experience was, having been, to me, abused at 13 and told to be something that you weren't. And then later in life, having lost all of that time and going, oh my gosh, science and biology says I'm a woman. No one should have messed with that. And I lost all these years, behaving and looking and acting like a man.
Yeah. So I want to clear one thing up, and that is that so it was a long process for me as for deciding to transition. So like the way the ideology goes, and like I think I've made it pretty clear that I don't agree with this anymore, but this is
Mhm.
the general, mindset is that you're born trans, you're essentially the opposite sex born in the body of your sex. You're psychological, I believed I was psychologically male, but physically female. But I had a lot of concerns about like medically transitioning, my singing voice being one of them.
Mhm.
Just not knowing, I mean, I knew my voice would get deeper, but just not knowing if it would have undesirable effects on my singing voice or not. And then
Mhm.
also, like, I'm barely 5'2", and I'm like very small boned. And one of the things my parents told me, and lots of people told me when I was a teenager, wanting to transition, suffering from gender dysphoria, was you'll never pass as a man. You're always going to be a trans man. Like, people are going to look at you, and they're always going to know that you're trans. And that indeed was how it went down. So what happened to me is I started testosterone, and pretty much my worst fear, my voice dropped from like a lower soprano level to a baritone in
Oh my
about 4
gosh.
months. Um,
Wow.
so it happened very fast. But the
Yeah.
rest of me, like physically, I didn't change that much. Like, some people say they grew facial hair immediately, or I did gain some muscle mass, but like looking at pictures of me from then, like, I don't really look that different. So it
Mhm.
was really frustrating to me because like this voice change happened right away, but I didn't ever really physically pass as male. Like, on the phone, I totally could, but
Right.
in person, people, most of the time, they would just kind of stare at me and like not know um, which gender I was, or they would think I was a little kid sometimes. Like, they think I
Oh
was,
my
like a
gosh.
13-year-old boy, because I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
And that was, it didn't go like how I planned it at all. Like, I wanted to be seen as an adult, I
Mhm.
wanted to be seen as a man, but that never actually happened for me completely. And um, so most of the time, like the 13 years that I identified as trans, it was more inwardly. And I didn't actually, I started to medically transition twice, once when I was 23 and once when I was 28. And both times I had a lot of anxiety about being able to pass and all of that. But like you were saying, living that long believing this ideology, I mean, I do think it's damaging. I think it's a sexist ideology as well. And I think I internalized a lot of, really damaging ideas about women, and what it means to be a woman. Like, I'm sorry, but like, being a woman or a man isn't just a feeling that anyone
Mhm.
can have. It's not based on stereotypes. It's not based on liking dresses in pink, or
Mhm.
like how quiet and submissive you are. Like,
Right.
that's not being a woman, like,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
Well,
And but I mean, it's essentially what the ideology trains you. So it's like, I already had a lot of internalized sexism and misogyny, and then when I started believing this ideology, um, it gave me some even more like toxic sexist beliefs. And so it did take me, you know, probably 50, because, you know, there was the 2 years after I detransitioned to sort of like deprogram. And so it has taken me probably 15 years to, or over 15 years to really break free of it. But that said, I mean, I wouldn't really say that I have any regrets, just because now I feel like sharing my process can help other people. And, you know, if there was a way for me to go back and have the same experiences and like glean the same knowledge about the subject without having the voice struggles that I've had, like I would. But also I'm learning to love my new voice, and I just like I accept my situation where I'm at, but it has taken a lot to get here. And I don't think that just any 13-year-old or 15-year-old or 17-year-old or even like adults that suffer from severe mental health issues, which is something that's happening right now, you know, they're not getting proper care, they're not getting proper therapy or just seeing legitimate doctors. Instead, they're just getting this affirmation model, which is it's just harming a lot of people. So I am grateful to be able to help, potentially help people by sharing my story.
Right. So, another question I have, and I have like these questions that pop up every time you talk, which I love. When I hear you say that, you know, you believed you were meant to be a man, or you wanted to be and operate and live like a man, and then your friends are telling you, well, you're tiny and petite and 5'2", like you're never going to pass as a man. Two things come to mind. First of all, the entire stereotype that they're telling us shouldn't be a discussion is also what they're telling you, right? Like, with the stereotype of a man is, you know, the ideal man is tall and strong and big and hairy and like manly man. Um, and then women are supposed to be petite and quiet and cute and dainty and lovely. And I'm I'm very much a girly girl, and so luckily I fit into like the perfect matriarchy of, you know, what a woman should be, because I love makeup and all the pretty things. But the same people telling you that the stereotypes are so harmful are also telling you, well, if you want to be a man, you can't just be a man. You have to take all these things to make yourself a man. You have to get hairy and tall and big and muscular. And you start taking hormones and steroids to accomplish the appearance of a man, knowing that you're right, your friends are right. At 5'2", you're never going to be probably looked at like, without a doubt, this is a man.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with the transgender movement with children is, and a lot of it comes from my faith, is that, you know, our identity is in who Jesus creates us to be. And when you start transgendering a child, you tell them, well, you were made wrong, first of all. So let's make you this opposite gender, which you can't actually be, right? But now you aren't the other gender either. And so you're stuck in the middle, which is like being kind of a nothing, like a non-existent being, because you aren't really a female and now you're saying you're not a male either. Did you feel that at all during your transition, where you were like, I'm trying so hard to be recognized and identified as a man, and I'm not, but I'm not a woman either. Am I just kind of lost? Was it emotionally painful to feel like that, or did you feel like that?
Um, Absolutely. I felt lost. I think that, well, there's this whole thing. I mean, some people will intentionally try to appear as neither gender, right? Or
Mhm.
neither sex. And you touched on something that I want to bring up here, and that is this idea that so as someone who speaks up against gender ideology, I often get accused of conflating sex and gender. And a lot of times these people will say, well, you know, obviously we don't deny biology. Like we know there's biological sex, which is like how you're born. I
Mhm.
mean, some of them do. Some of them deny biological sex as well and try to say it's a spectrum and all of that, which is ridiculous. But but for the most part, they'll say, yeah, we know biological sex is real, but then there's this idea of gender, which is, you know, gender is a social construct. I know I do air
Mhm.
quotes the most with this topic. Like I
'Cause you don't
can't.
want anyone to think you actually believe this crap. You're like, "This is the term that the left has, like, come up with," so That's
Yeah.
so funny. I do that too.
But yeah, so they'll say, well, gender is what's a social construct, and then my first question is always, well, then why are people encouraged um, to alter their biological sex, to alter their physicality in order to change their gender? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like as you said, why can't I be a man like this if that's the
Yeah.
ideology? And
Yep.
there is a huge split in the community. Like there's people known as trans medicalists who think if you have true gender dysphoria, then you should medically transition, and that's it. They don't believe in like non-binary or anything like that. And then there's
Hmm.
like this other camp that's basically, um, I could just say I'm a man right now, not change anything about myself, and other people have to accept me as a man. And
Right.
it's hate speech if someone slips up and calls me she. So there's a lot of disagreement even within that community, and there's just so many logical fallacies even within the same camps that contradict each other. But yes, I felt very lost and confused, and I think people who haven't actually tried to medically transition, like I think a lot of allies or people who are just like identifying as non-binary or something, but like not taking hormones, like I don't think they
Right.
realize how difficult it actually is, to be like medically in the middle where people are like staring at you, and like I definitely, and like let me get something straight, like homophobia, transphobia, like hatred on the basis of that, like I never like approve of that at all, and I did
Hmm.
get harassed quite a bit, and that wasn't painful, or that was very painful, and I don't think anyone should have to go through that, but speaking up on what's right and about like biological and medical facts is completely different
Hmm.
from harassing someone or hate speech, and that's another thing I see being blurred a lot as well, is if you disagree or criticize in any way, you're written off as a hater or a bigot.
Hmm.
I know
Yeah.
I got a little off topic there, so
Oh
sorry
no,
about
that's okay. I
that.
love it because it spurs more questions. So what I actually want to know, I mean, I want to know like exactly where you stand as far as, do you believe in the term non-binary? Do you believe that people can and should transition, but at a certain age? And there is no wrong answer here, and I'm not a hateful homophobic person. I think you know that, or you probably wouldn't have come on my podcast. But I actually just want to know. It's going to spur more discussion anyway. But I want to know, especially as a person who's been in this, it has experience in this field, what your belief system is.
Yeah, so when it comes to children and minors, I absolutely don't think any minors should be medically transitioned,
Mhm.
at all, because at that point the responsibility doesn't fall on the kid making the decision, like that falls on the parents and the
Yeah.
doctors. And I think what we're going to see is, well, already other countries, like I know Sweden's one of them, have stopped giving puberty blockers because of some dangerous health effects that they're seeing, like lack of spinal bone density, and all these really dangerous side effects that are happening. So the U.S. is kind of behind. Actually, the what is it? The American Association of Pediatrics. A little side note: their policy until I think it was like maybe a week ago was to um, for their first measure to be gender affirming care, and then now they've actually taken a step back from that, and
Ooh.
they released a statement. Yeah, sorry, I won't go too much into that because I really encourage you to look it up, because I was so relieved when I saw them sort of retracting their
Yeah.
stance on that.
So
But
so they were gonna primarily focus on gender affirming care in, like, the medical field in which country did you say?
in this country,
In this country, and then they took a
yeah,
step back. Yeah, and
exactly.
did they release a statement why? Do you know?
So it was in the Wall Street Journal. So the Wall Street Journal, like maybe a month ago now, released an article just criticizing the
Mm,
AAP, on their policy, and then citing the fact that Sweden and other countries are no longer. I mean, some of them still allow it in some cases, I guess, which I don't think is right. I think it should be no cases ever.
right.
But they said now we're prioritizing psychotherapy and other
Oh,
treatments, in front of what's known as gender affirming care. And so the Wall Street Journal released an opinion piece on just sort of criticizing the AAP on promoting childhood transition.
Gotcha.
And so then there was some pushback. Like there were some critics of that article that were from inside the AAP. There were several articles like back and forth with varying opinions, but now they have officially made a statement on, saying that in light of, I don't want to say exactly what they said because like,
You're like, I don't
I'm
want
going
to
to
quote the Wall
misspeak,
Street Journal.
but yeah, I was like
me.
very happy to see the outcome of. I've been meaning to like make a video about it or post something about it on my page, but yeah, it is encouraging. But that said, I mean, here in California, like a healthcare bill just passed that is essentially going to allow children to take refuge in California, like if they're from a state where this is illegal, which it should be in every state, but now they can come here and get those procedures. So that just passed. So it's still an ongoing battle. But I kind of forgot what I was talking about before that.
We were that's okay. We were talking about your belief system, which I am still curious about. So yeah, like what you, as far as the gender recognition thing.
Yeah, so I don't think any children should ever transition ever. When it comes to adults, like a lot of people say I'm anti-trans, or that I'm like judging people who make the decision to transition, and that is so not the case at all. Like I totally understand why people want to transition, and people who are gender nonconforming in particular, like I've always been more of a masculine woman. I mean, sometimes I do occasionally, like I do enjoy wearing makeup and I enjoy dressing up and things like that, but I never felt like I fit into like the female stereotype very well. And so people who are gender nonconforming, like I understand like why they feel driven to transition, because they feel like it will help them blend into society better. A lot of it gets internalized, like to your own body. They want to feel more comfortable in their bodies. Like I understand like why they're making the decisions they're making. However, I don't think it's ethical for doctors to be doing what they're doing. Like I believe that it is breaking the Hippocratic Oath to perform, which is first do no harm.
Right.
It's going against what they pledged to do by becoming a doctor, by performing these surgeries that essentially destroy the function of the body parts, mutilating that body part. And like if someone is to get genital surgery, for instance, the body's hormonal system and the function of the genitals, like it's not just about sex. It's not just about like the external appearance. It's your body is like a delicate ecosystem, and when you are destroying the function of a healthy body part and then becoming dependent on outside hormones for the rest of your life. Right. I mean, especially these people who are starting this as kids or starting it in their early 20s, they're they're starting to get osteoporosis now. They're starting to get all these severe health problems. If you're female transitioning to male, your heart attack risk goes up by about 4 times from taking testosterone. Yeah, because it's your
body's not made for that.
This. Exactly.
Because you were a female.
Right.
So what is it that made you at 13? My goal with this podcast is to always be informative and action taking. Like, the knowledge is out there, the information is out there. I think it's important for parents to kind of be able to look for these signs that this is maybe going to be an issue in their child's life so they can tackle it the right way. What is it that at 13 years old you felt so strongly that you were a boy as opposed to a girl?
So it was a lot of things. So I was always kind of an outcast, misfit type of kid. I was very artistic and creative. I was also very like analytical and mathematical as well. And I struggled socially. I suspect that I might have a mild form of autism that wasn't diagnosed because I was very academically successful, but socially, like I struggled a lot, and I didn't feel like I fit in with other girls. Especially, I had a lot of friends who were boys when I was that age, and so then when puberty starts to hit, it's like just so many things were happening for me. Like, that's kind of when the relationship between like boys and girls starts shifting, and it's like, uh, it's like I grew breasts, and I went through puberty like very quickly. Like basically within a year, like my body completely changed, and I felt sort of like foreign in my body already, which I think is a common occurrence
Mm-hmm.
for young girls going through puberty. But it was like I went from being able to have friends who were boys to like just being looked at like objectified, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't only like younger boys that were doing this, but it was like, men start looking at you differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically as soon as you have breasts, it's like you go from being a child to a sex object in
Mm-hmm.
society's eyes in basically 1 or 2 years. And thank you. And
Don't worry, we can edit that out.
okay, cool, thank you. So yeah, it's a big change. And then I think I just discovered this online forum at exactly the wrong time. Um, it just, I felt like I'm really supposed to be a boy. It just
So when
describes
you
so many of my
started,
other
like,
issues so well.
when your body started developing at 13, it felt so foreign that you were like, this is wrong, everything that's happening to me, kind of? Do you
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
like, and I wish I could go back to being in junior high and high school, and I was always a pretty nice person, but there are people that weren't, and you wonder, okay, if my behavior towards somebody would have been different, could I have changed their life? Is there anything that you feel like your like girlfriends or boyfriends could have done to kind of affirm like who you were? Or did you just feel so isolated, or did you even talk to your friends? I feel like when you say, "Oh, I didn't really belong with kind of the girls in my school," and I immediately think of the cliquey girls that you have to be pretty and cute, and the boys have to like you, or you can't hang out with us. And always hated that because I was super awkward in junior high. And I wonder, I wonder if that's something that parents could be teaching their kids too, is, hey, if you see someone that doesn't fit in or doesn't feel good or seems left out, if you were to include that person, could that have changed how you felt? I mean, did your friends or even like your unfriends have enough of an effect on who you felt like you were supposed to be that it could have changed how you perceived yourself?
Wow, that's a big question.
Ooh, I
I
like to
mean,
get deep like this. And I love stumping my guests. Have you ever thought about this?
yeah, I have, and it's such a complex issue because like it really comes down to like bullying and just the dynamics between kids in school, particularly girls, tend to be more passive aggressive. They tend to be more about like the gossip and ostracization of other girls,
Mhm.
versus I was always more like confrontational. Like if I had a problem with someone, um, I mean, even like in like first grade, I got in like physical fights with other kids and stuff, which I don't condone that behavior either. But I was just always like more direct, and like other girls, I don't want to say all other girls, but there is a tendency uh, for people to not respond very well to like directness, and they'd rather just sort of like ostracize you from the group and
Mhm.
gossip behind your back and all of that. And the root of that, I mean, I don't know if it comes down to parenting. I do think that some of it could have to do with the school and just how they handle bullying. And but I think school is just, it's a hard time for a lot of kids, especially if you're kind of different socially. But yeah, I mean, I think if I wasn't bullied, and yeah, I feel like if my social experience with the bullying in particular had been better, that could have made things different for me,
Mhm.
But there's just so much, it's there's some really deep rooted issues with our society as well, just on how we view women and how we view gender that um, I feel like had an effect on me outside of school as well. So it's just really hard to say, but I would
Would
like
you
to.
say would you say, when you say society, are you referring to like the typical, magazine covers and actresses that everyone has to look a certain way and be a certain size. And is that what you mean by like society kind of forcing you to conform to, a female look?
Yeah. It's the physical appearance,
Mhm,
which, having to be a certain weight and like everything
mhm,
you just said, but even like more so than like the physical appearance, it's like I never felt like it was okay to be myself. I felt like
mhm.
everything about my personality, like, or a lot of my personality just like defied the stereotypes versus like, if I were to um take on a leadership role or something like that, as part of a project in school, it's like I would get called bossy, or
Mm.
versus like, like a boy would be like celebrated for being that
Right.
way. And
See, and that to me, like that, that is like everyone else's fault around you for not being the kind of person that embraces who you are. You know what I mean? It's like so much of your process, I feel like you should be able to um look past what you did or didn't do or what you felt or didn't feel, and like I honestly think a lot of the responsibility needs to be blamed on the people around you and society for saying, like, to me, I look at you and go, "You're lovely without makeup. Your haircut's adorable.
thank you.
You're a perfectly beautiful female." And for anyone to say you need to look or act different to be a female is just disgusting. And the people around you, I mean, they should have embraced who you were. I was a bossy little thing. I mean, I've been a bossy little thing my whole life, but somehow I was surrounded by people that just kind of accepted that. And I don't know if it's, my family or my friends or my church, or it's just different upbringing. And I feel like that can be something that people need to realize needs to change, is our acceptance of people and love for people just as they are, because trying to conform them to something completely different isn't the solution. It's actually what's causing the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it does really come down to different upbringings, like, yeah, if I felt like I was more supported to be myself as I was,
Mhm.
I feel like the drive to transition wouldn't have been there, or it probably would have been greatly reduced, or I at least would have questioned the ideology a bit more, because I really did feel like, I felt like to be myself I had to change myself, and that really makes no
Mhm.
sense. Like
No,
now,
that's so true. That's amazing.
like if if being trans, or identifying as trans is really helping people to find themselves, I just it's one of the inconsistencies that I referred to earlier. It's just like, if you need surgery to be something, then that's not your
And that's
authentic
not
self.
authentically you. Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
true. And I don't someone else had made that point too and said, I want to be comfortable with who I am. I want to love who I am. And the idea that you change who you are, it's like, well, then you don't love who you are. You are trying to be something else completely. It's a complete hypocrisy, the entire movement. So is your voice what kind of side effects do you have long term, if you don't mind sharing, from at 13 being told to start taking drugs and medicines that you clearly did not need? Are you suffering long-term effects, or is your voice suffering long-term effects?
um yes, there are some lingering effects. So I was not even on testosterone for a year, because I identified and like socially transitioned, like earlier than that, but I didn't start taking testosterone until I was 28. Well, I took it once at 23 and again at 28. So I was on it, total for less than a year. So my effects have been more reversible than a lot of people. A lot of people go on testosterone for, 5, 8, 10 years before they detransition. And um, so I have mostly bounced back from a lot of the stuff. But the voice is one of the things that changed almost immediately. And uh, it has bounced back a little bit, just like slightly, but most of it has come from just retraining my voice, because
Mhm.
once the vocal cords thicken from the testosterone, it's you can't go back. Well, you can't go back at all. Some people, there's a surgery called like vocal feminization surgery, but it's a very high risk surgery. And like as a singer, it's not really advised at all, because what could end up happening is just that I would lose my singing voice completely again, and not be able to sing at all. And so at least now, like now I'm a low alto, but I can still sing. So it's like I'd rather just stick with what I have. And I've, like I said, I'm learning to love my new voice. It's mostly it's singing that makes it more difficult. But also my voice does get sore when I'm talking for like more than an hour. It's like I get this like residual soreness that kind of lingers throughout the day. It's like my voice doesn't really know where to go, because like when I was trying to pass as male, I would like talk down in this register more, which is like a chest resonance.
Oh my gosh, you just completely changed your voice. I started thinking someone was like hacking into our podcast. That was really trippy.
Yeah, I know it's kind of weird to like
That's an
freak
art in
people out
itself, I will
sometimes.
say that. Oh my gosh.
And then when I was first detransitioning, I was like kind of trying to speak more up here in like just a basic like female register so I could pass better. It's like I was looking more androgynous, but now I'm just like, it's like my voice doesn't really know where to go. Like if it's up there, if it's down there, like both kind of feel like not optimal. So it's like I kind of just speak at this pitch because it feels the most natural, but like also my voice does get sore after like an hour or two.
So I don't want to wrap anything up without asking you, what advice, two different advices. What advice would you give young children who are feeling like they were born in the wrong body, who are feeling gender dysphoria? Let's tackle that one first because I don't want to overwhelm you. What advice would you give those kids, those vulnerable children?
I would say whoever you are, whatever body you're in, you can be yourself in the body that you have. Your potential is limitless. You can be whoever you want, do whatever you want with your life. Like whatever body you're in, you're not limited by that at all. Even if someone in your life or a society or gender ideology is telling you that, you don't have to accept that. You don't have to buy into that.
Gosh, that made me emotional. It's just so true. It's like the concept that we are telling little kids, even just that whether you're male or female depicts everything that you can do or can't do. It sets us back, 50, 100 years. We have come so far in, and I'm not a feminist. Let's be very clear. I hate feminism, but I love to work. I'm a working mom. I try to do everything, but we've come so far in, what men and women can do fluently without being taunted or emasculated or defeminized. And this movement is supposedly in line with the feminist movement and the progressive movement, which now tells people you can't be whatever you want because you must, apply to this certain gender if you want to do those things. And it makes me so sad that kids are being taught that they aren't enough as they are. And parents need to do a really great job of making sure their kids are loved as they are and accepted. So, I don't know where your parents stand as far as if they are just confused again about, oh, she detransitioned. Okay, did we make a mistake? Or if they, beat themselves up or if whatever. But what about parents? What advice would you give to parents who have a gender confused child?
I would say to parents to, first of all, listen to your kid. And, if they're coming to you saying that they are struggling with gender dysphoria, just try to be kind and compassionate. But that said, you don't need to affirm it. You don't need to compromise your beliefs to placate them. I think there is a way to be firm, but also kind and compassionate. And that is, I'm not a parent, so I'm sure it's more difficult than I'm making it sound. But what happened with my parents, who do love me a lot, by the way, and a lot of what they did is because they thought it was for the best. They didn't know what to do, but they were like very harsh with me when I when I opened up to them about having gender dysphoria, wanting to transition, they, freaked out and were very harsh to me. And that actually pushed me further away from them. Like it made me want to rebel by transitioning, which, a kid may do that anyway. But I think that compassion, listening, and understanding while still holding firm in your beliefs, like I think that is the best way to go. I feel like if I would have gotten just a little bit more listening and compassion and maybe some other solutions offered up, rather than just like, it's transitioning or nothing at all.
Right.
Which that ties along to like, we need to be actually studying alternative approaches to gender dysphoria, which is potentially one of the things I want to study as a scientist. But we'll get there.
Well, yeah, you're a molecular biologist now, aren't you?
I guess I don't know if I get to call myself that yet because I'm
say you do.
starting
You
to
just
look for a job.
graduated.
But
Yeah,
well,
that's
thank you so
amazing. I
much.
think you are. If you've got the education, you are. You don't need someone to pay you to say that you are. You are,
All right,
Cat.
cool.
You are
I'll take
perfect
it.
just as you are. All right, are you ready for your cheers?
I am.
Okay. What are we cheersing to? Oh, wow, that looks delicious. What is that?
So, this is a.
Is it a mimosa?
It's a non-alcoholic cocktail. There's this brand called Curious Elixirs, which I love a lot because I don't drink alcohol a lot personally, but they make like fancy cocktails that are non-alcoholic, but they still have that like complexity to the flavor. So, Curious Elixirs.
It looks amazing.
What are you cheersing?
Oh, you get to decide what we're cheering. Oh, I'm cheersing. Sorry, it's a peach iced tea, like Crystal Light, sugar-free, healthy stuff.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah, I'm not any more fun.
I get to decide what we're cheersing. To just happiness for everyone and happiness for all beings.
Love it. Simple and perfect. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for coming on. I'll make sure people can find you, download your music, check you out. All the information will be in the podcast. And I am so thankful that you are using your voice to speak up and to educate people and to inform people with love and compassion. There is a need for someone like you in this world, and I'm very, very thankful for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Lindsay. Thanks for having me and for asking some excellent questions.
Thanks for tuning in to the Patriot Barbie podcast. Follow me on Truth Social at The Patriot Barbie and Instagram at the.patriot.barbie. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. You can find this show, my book Targeted, and my apparel line on www.patriotbarbie.com. God bless America, and God bless you.
It's Dylan's KC Barbecue at 4 Valley locations. Our sports bar in Arrowhead is packed with TVs for the ultimate sports fan. Our Wildlife World Zoo location will have you on the edge of your seat, dining right next to our 60,000-gallon shark tank. Dylan's Bayou at Pleasant Harbor has never-ending sunsets, beautiful people, and live music every weekend. And our newest location, Western Trails Ranch, is 12 acres of rodeo fun and live outdoor concerts for the entire family. It's Dylan's KC Barbecue, where we're elite, unique, and memorable.